So now, continuing this afternoon, we have two more presenters. First is a good dear friend of mine from Ganyasadage, Valerie Gabriel. She's, some of you know her. She's an expert at growing garlic and other things that she does in her greenhouse. She has a small farm over there, and I've gotten to know her over the last couple of years. I've been at a few conferences where she was, and like most of the people that I brought here today and tomorrow is people that I met along the way. And so that's always been my passion, is about gardening and all these things. And so at this time, we decided to have a collection of everybody because, as I said this morning, it's about food security. And so when you have food security, it's not just about growing potatoes. It's everything, all the interests, but it begins with soil. And that's why I had Graham come over here, and maybe I know for sure we'll have him come back maybe just for a whole day presentation. But at least people got to hear him. How he's laughing. I'm going to get him for 2 days. And they'll fix his wagon. But I really appreciate that, and so much Janice for all the things she's been involved with. Yes, and it's true. What she was talking about, about the seeds and you get seeds. Well, I know there's times when she said we're generous with our seeds. When I went to Tonawanda, well, I've gone to Tonawanda many times, but I remember one time visiting Corbett Sundown. And he came back, he had a little handful of seeds. He says, Steve, do you grow these in Ganawagi? I said, no, we don't have that kind. So he went and he came back. He had half a shopping bag full of hayo beans and he just gave it to me. I said, wow. And then there's other places in the Seed Savers. I sent $5. I got 3 beans in the mail. I should have sent 10. So, anyways, that became like a standing joke for me, but it's really true. What happened one time, and if Dave Arquette was here, he would probably tell you that story because he said it a few times. So when he started to get involved with it, he was encouraged by Brian Skeeters. He was a chief. He died many years ago, but I was a friend with his mother. Her name was Marita Skeeters. And to my mother-in-law, she said, oh, Steve, you should go meet this lady. And she was involved at that time in her community, and she would go to the schools and things like that to try to get the kids and different people going. So we got together, me and her, and we started doing things. So, and already at that time, she knew that I had these different kind of beans from Onondaga and Tonawanda and all over. And then at one time, there was a project that Janice knows very well. They were doing white corn, but they actually made a company called Arrowhead Chips. They did it in 6 nations. And so my late friend Norton thought this was really good. He says, that's a step towards being sovereign, creating a business out of our own. But it went in different ways, and they had a bad season, so it kind of came to an end. But what happened, she invited me to a meeting, and very quickly before, she invited to me a meeting with the Agricultural Department of Ontario, who was sponsoring this. And what happened, she said that the guy said they took the corn and they tested it, in Ottawa in the lab. And when they came back, they were amazed with the results. What happened was the corn is measured, the grain is measured by protein and fat in the grain itself. And this corn was far superior to any of the corn that's growing out there in the fields for feed for animals. The problem with it is that our corn is designed that it's the companion of man. So we have to work hand in hand with it. And so what happens is the field corn, they can plant it, they can just leave it, they spray it with all the things they need to do in the springtime, in the summer, and they let it go. All right? And then in the fall, it falls down. Our corn doesn't fall down. So it has to be picked by hand. So that was the thing they were having trouble with. So they want to breed an extra collar into the corn. And so when I met with them with Marie Skeeters, I told them I was against that idea because it would change the corn. But nevertheless, they still took some of it and they took it to Brazil, and they still bred the corn and with another corn, but that corn changed. And I told them, if you do that, our corn will change. It's never going to be the same. So there was some of that seed that is around somewhere, but the people didn't pick it up. But what was interesting, what I learned from that. So from there, that's how we got more involved. And so when Dave and Arquette, through their agriculture, no, the environment, that's the department they were working with. So there wasn't many things like within the community, so they were able to use that to try to get gardening back in their community. So when he came to see me, I just gave him 3 beans. So when he talks, he's going to tell you, they're saying, oh, Steve only gave us 3 beans. And the reason I did that is because people come along and I was giving them tons of beans. And then when I would ask them, well, how was your garden? Oh, the dog ran through my garden, which means they didn't take care of it. But now we need to be more cautious of that. And it's good to share some of the stories, even though sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's not. But the thing is, no matter what happens, even when I got involved with Randy in the first year, we had some challenges with that, and some of it had to do with the seeds. So since I know people all over, I called my friend in the state of Maine who's associated with Fedco Seeds, and he gave me some advice. And then we had problem with the beans, so I got a hold of my friend who I consider a bean expert out in Illinois, and he sent me some stuff. But the thing is, what I said to Randy, even though we feel disappointed, we learn something from it. So we learn from even if it's a mistake, we learn from that. You see, everything's a learning process, and then we're able to share that with each other. And that's what's important here. And so now, you know, I'm really pleased the way our conferences come out, and next year we're going to have even different ideas, and it's going to grow from here. But since people are really interested in a variety of things, you know, I've met Valerie here a couple of years ago, and I have a lot of respect for her. So I want to introduce Valerie Gabriel from Ganisadage.
Según Sawagwego, Gurnu Dagwa Yunjats, Ganisadage, Ni de Wagenu, Danu Waxkardewage. I think most of you have met me, but there are some new faces, and so it's really nice to meet everybody. I've been doing farming my whole life, and basically I tried to run away from it, but it found me again and again and again. And so I had to give in and to allow what was pushing me in life to continue growing food. So I wrote a little something because I am a very nervous presenter. I do get nervous in the beginning, and I don't want to lose my track. But to set up the presentation today, I will go over growing techniques for garlic and seed saving, the clones or the seed. And aside from that, I like to also bring in the human aspect of why I do what I do. So I will begin. So I do grow a lot of different varieties of vegetables, not just like a small variety. Whatever anybody shares with me, I will try to grow. And if it doesn't match with me, I'll let it go. But when I was around 20, I started, a small market farm, and I really wanted to change the world. And I think that everybody wants to do something like that. What I realized really soon was that I think I was a slave. And I started to understand that the environment surrounding me was not connecting with what I had known my whole life growing up with my grandparents and my parents who farmed all the time and never put a monetary value to food. So I clashed with that colonial, capitalistic way of existing. And so far, since 2 years ago, I think I remember somebody saying we shouldn't sell seed. And also, so I meditated on that. And even today, it's almost every day, every time I eat a meal, like, what would it take for me not to have spent money on this or to even depend on a monetary value system? So what I started doing with the produce from the farm is setting up trade connections with people. And oftentimes what I ate was just very local, whether it was like, fresh cow milk or meat from other people, or I was even at that time trading for coffee and chocolate from the chocolate store. But everybody always had a monetary value to it. So they would only trade me $20 worth of vegetables. So that was a learning step. And so now I've dove deeper into the trading system. And when I can give, I try to give as much as like that person needs, or I say, take what you need, and then that person will decide what they need. If there's only a small amount that I have, I'll usually just keep it for myself because I have to take care of myself first before I can take care of other people. That's basically, okay, yeah. So my background is in environment and wildlife management. I never fully agreed with the Western culture of how they manage things, but I understand why they do what they do. But I don't think it matches to how wildlife and environment used to be pre-colonization. So learning, I felt like everything I learned was a lot to do with the errors I made. So 9 out of 10 times I would fail, and that one time I would succeed, and I would have to find like new strength, new energy to keep going. And that basically, led me to understand the process of diversification with our food system is absolutely necessary, but that we have to take a step back and not expect so much from them. Because how we push ourselves every day, we wake up, we expect a lot more from ourselves, so much so that we don't treat ourselves like a physical body anymore. And in the last 3 years, I did end up falling ill with Lyme's. Lyme's disease is a really big thing in present day because of the movement of other insects into our area here. So it's not what they say on the internet. Like, you don't have to be bitten by a tick for more than 24 hours. You don't have to be bitten by an adult tick. You can be bitten by a nymph and still get Lyme's disease, and you'll never know you even have it until you can't walk anymore, So it's a really serious issue when you're somebody who's working in the food system and you don't have insurance and all of these things that most people who go to an everyday job would have. So what I'm about to present to you today has a lot to do with me being maxed out in terms of the way I interact with the environment is my capability that I have to be able to take care of myself. So making that connection and moving forward, I will present growing garlic, different techniques for growing, curing, and storing and trading garlic. So I won't go into the history of garlic too much, but basically it comes from Central Asia. And the date of domestication is a while back, but I like to look at how the plant was in the wild. So I try to invite that natural way of growing, and I've tried to experiment with how far can I push garlic to grow in its natural state again. And obviously that can't be done in 1 or 2 years, but it's about changing the mindset that we're thinking about way in the future rather than just tomorrow. So this is a slide I had shown 2 years ago, but I just kind of revamped it. So intentions for growing, and secondary, how, like, our intentions for seed saving. So we're growing our awareness, and we're growing for ourselves and for each other. And for seed saving, it's to share and trade with family, friends, people, different communities. We grow patiently. Everything worthy takes time. And when you try to rush something, it usually kind of fails. Growing where, it doesn't matter as long as you're with community and or family. And growing when, always, even if the conditions aren't perfect, which they never will be. And really sometimes we don't even really know what's going on. So having faith and having and the talk about spirituality, while, you know, being in the environment, getting sick and getting challenged, getting hurt, it really makes you question what it is to be a human being again. So why do we do this? It's to honor life, and it's to practice a balanced living and connection. So I do work with my partner, Chuck Barnett. We do use our energies in different ways to bring in funds for our summer program. So there have been a lot of highs and lows, but our main goal is to support our relationships between the growth between, like, plants and people. And everything that entails. So personal problems come into the program, and we try to help individuals manage that, or just to restart, to rekindle communication between youth, or youth and adults, or children and adults, and everything in between. Like, I don't even like putting, like, labels on who's who. It's just that we do have issues with communication, respectful communication, and so it comes out at the farm. And so we get to get real nitty-gritty with that. Just a few pictures of the things we've done and grown throughout the last 2 or 3 or 4 years. I got really interested in growing sunflowers, and I really like to learn how to use sunflower a little better. So because it's such a good food source for us and animals, that it's like, it would be a shame if we didn't grow it at our farm. And we do work collectively with other people who want to grow. I'll help, like, you know, I know we're talking about no-till, but some fallow fields do need to be tilled the first year, maybe the second year. Every situation is different. So I would go out and with, you know, Big Bessie tractor over there, I would go and ride on Center Road, and I would take the tiller or the plow, and I would go and help people that way, or I would use the little tractor, little tiller. So we do, except for last year, we do usually have a collective harvesting and planting thing that happens. So this here is a few people from here, a few people from Augustusne area, and some people from my home, and some of my friends from here, and back home as well. We do clipping and just general, like, seed saving for whatever we can do, and every year is different. So it's a very fluid program that we do. Just to get right into it, growing good garlic requires a really supportive environment, just like how we need a really supportive environment to keep growing. Soil condition, we have to have, like, optimal soil conditions, crop rotation, mulch, water, nutrient availability, biodiversity availability within and in the surrounding fields and forests, and also depending on the climate and timing, that can really have an effect on your garlic crop. I feel the number one most important thing is mulch for growing in our conditions in this area. So wherever I grow, I do use a lot of leaves that you see in the picture in the corner. And we spread them over raised beds. In this field in particular, it was the first year we cultivated garlic in there, but we had prepared the soil 2 years prior by 1 year was brush hogging all the bigger trees, which were like, I don't know, like they were that big. And I know it's a shame we took some trees down, but I couldn't grow garlic if I didn't have that field. And so different years, different fields require different practices. This one, we understood there was a drainage issue with water, but it was also, this is the top field to this field. So continuing that way, it rises, and then the drainage of water comes into this field. And this is the lowest part. So what I had done in the spring, after this was the winter time, what I had done in the spring was I dug a drainage ditch, and right away we ended up seeing more snakes and more frogs. And so we want to, aside from that ditch being there, there was no water source. So it's as easy as inviting a water source. And even without knowing why I did what I did, I took the backhoe and I went and I dug a big hole behind my house because there was no water source, and it looks messy, but trying to rewild the place. And that just includes things looking really ugly around you, then, mowed grass and nice flowers. So it's always a little bit of mayhem when growing a bunch of different things. So the mulch, it really, everybody knows a little bit about mulch. So I don't want to get boring here, but it provides that moisture retention, and it regulates ground temperature, and ultimately you're creating habitat for smaller animals. I've tried with leaves, I've tried with straw, and I've also tried with no leaves, but I've also seen people use a plastic cover. But honestly, I'm really trying to get rid of all the plastic on the farm just because of the knowledge of microplastics, and I don't like that. So I'm changing my thinking around that as well. So in the fall time, when we're ready to plant in that prepped field, I know it's really hard to see, but I can never have a good picture of the garlic in the ground. But here's a garlic, here's a garlic, here's a garlic, here's a garlic, and here's a garlic. So it's about, we try to plant the cloves 6 inches apart, and we've tried more. Ideally, this has been the best growing placement for garlic, which is a bed, so 4 feet or 3 feet, and 6 inches apart, more towards the edge, and just leaves more space for sunlight and air circulation. And since the weeds are taken care of by the leaves, there's hardly any weeding to do, and the leaves do act a little more accordingly to my schedule, whereas if I put straw, there would be more weeds coming out, and garlic is a heavy feeder. It doesn't like competition, so really, take care of the weed management for your garlic or onion crop, whatever you're into. Okay, so basically, yeah, if you take care of the garlic in every stage of handling, you can, even though they say hardnecks cannot store as long, I've kept hardneck garlic for up to 2 years, and with care. So it's building that relationship with the crop, whatever it is, and taking care of it. So you plant the clove about 6 inches deep, 6 inches apart, And but you can ultimately play around with 4 to 8 inches depending on the space you have. And then after planting, you cover with a little bit of soil. I say 6 inches deep, but after the winter freezing and thawing, the clove does get heaved up a little bit, but it works out with the mulch that's put down. So it's heaved up a little bit. It's not so deep in the soil. So once it comes time to the mature plant being harvested, it's not stuck in the real wet soil. It's more above. So I don't know, we've always found like a nice balance with the garlic, and we haven't had too many issues with like viruses or bacteria or fungus that would like really affect the crop. It always ends up being a nice balance. So we do like harvest the crops that we grow. We teach students that we get during the summer, and they get involved with whatever they want to do that summer. So we say, what do you want to do? What do you want to learn? A lot of people wanted to learn canning or just working with food more. And so we did, we did canning here. I think it was like, what do you call that? Where you ferment cabbage or something? I don't know. What is it? Oh, sauerkraut. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so they did sauerkraut. They grew all these vegetables. They processed all the vegetables. They learned how to can. So it was really like a full system. And those who were there early enough got to do the seeding and the caretaking of the plants in the greenhouse. Oh yeah, so because garlic is a heavy feeder, and because it can carry a lot of, if you're just using the clones, it can carry a lot of disease and virus and fungus. So number one is crop rotation. And even if you're doing it in a small garden behind your house, try to think of your little smaller garden as a big field, and you're doing a rotation. And that could really prevent any diseases that would happen if you were just continuously planting it in the same spot. In the past, we've used horse manure, chicken manure, sheep manure, and green manures. And now, more recently, we're trying to find the right animals to incorporate onto the land so that I'm not like shoveling manure at my cousin's farm into old chicken feed bags, because that gets tiring after a while. So we have live goats now maintaining one field, and this summer we're going to move them again. And the animals really do wonders for soil and also weed management. Depending on the animal that you have, they'll go after different weeds. So that's also like another solution if you are interested in having chickens or smaller animals to fertilize your yard. When you plant the garlic in the fall, I guess it's just better to do a small fertilization in the fall when you plant the garlic. So after your garlic is planted, whatever fertilizer you use, but more specifically, it's just to encourage root growth, not stem or leaf growth. So you can use something with phosphorus and potassium. And you can even just use I know there was a trend where you put banana peels in water and then you put that on your crop. I've never tried it, but it looks like it works. I believe in banana peels. Yeah, that's about it. And then so in the springtime, once your stems and leaves emerge from the ground, then it just depends on your schedule. So 2 to 4 weeks, you apply another fertilizer, either in a liquid form, or if you don't have a thick mulch over your field, you can just, use granules or compost or something, fish emulsion, anything that you have your hands on. Really, you don't wait to go buy something, or don't wait to go and, spend $50 on something if you have something that will work in your house that you've used before. It doesn't have to be like magic, okay? if I'm missing anything. Even now, I'm really happy to say, because of all the, I know through the pictures, you'll see that there's like no plants on the ground, but it's either in the spring or the fall. But we do have a lot of different wild plants growing around the farm, and there's a lot of berries and trees that have been planted lately, but we do have a return of rabbits and deer into our fields. So for me, that's a way of saying, okay, now we're letting nature come in, even though we give them like tree bark from apple trees and this tree and that tree. It's a trade. It's a trade, but thinking long term, I would rather have deer come into the area and rabbits come into the area rather than always having to do the work myself. I mean, it's just let nature do the work if you can. Okay, so after you've planted them, they're gonna go through a winter. Hopefully you've planted it soon enough and not too late so that the plant has time to go through the whole process of growing. Now, because I'm always under like 10 different tasks on the daily, that was in the past, now I've calmed my life down. I always would push it to the end of October, which is late for garlic planting. Ideally, you'd want to do it mid-October, and some people even do it the beginning of October. But if you already have leaf growth like that in the fall, the chances of it becoming damaged by the cold is high, and then that'll just kind of ruin your crop, or it'll weaken it if it doesn't ruin it. The leaves will still grow, but then it's not at its full potential. So things will still grow, but there's always a trade-off if you don't do it at the right time for some things. Yeah, so I plant at the end of October. I mulch at the end of November because that's when people put their leaves out. So now I have to, do leaf collection, and it's from the surrounding area. And some people, would be really cautious about any diseases that are on the leaves for trees. When you're emptying the leaves, you take a look at what you're putting into the ground or onto the ground, and you have to, be observant of what you're putting into your fields. And I think that's the best way to mitigate any problems, is always just watching and believing, like when there's something in you saying you shouldn't do it, like probably don't do it. So November, the snow falls, it pushes the leaves to the ground. If I plant them earlier, that's when the big winds come and it blows the leaves off. So there's always like a little process to everything at the farm. So like I said, so when it grows, there's the 2/3 of the bulb, which is more or less underground, and about 1/3 of the bulb coming above the soil, but the leaves are covering it, so it is protected. When you harvest the garlic, everybody has a little different trick depending on the variety of garlic they're growing, but I do grow just music and a little red Russian garlic. But it's around like when 5 or 6 green leaves are remaining, are sticking out on top. Like this is one method of storing your garlic, and you see the stems, they're drying out, they're yellowing, they're getting cured in a shed here. That's when, 5 or 6 leaves, and you can pull the garlic out of the ground to check on your bulbs. There's this thing that happened to me once where, and I couldn't explain it until I just read it in a book somewhere. If you leave your garlic in too long and there's too much moisture at the end of summer, which is when the moisture really does come, like July, mid-July, your garlic can like flower out, okay? And the bulbs get big and they kind of flower out and they break the paper off your garlic. And so that makes it susceptible to diseases or fungus going into the cloves themselves. Whereas if you harvest it at the right time, the garlic you have all these well, I don't have those pictures on this one anymore, but the papers are complete. And it's the papers that are going to be protecting your clove and your future seed. So these white papers here, some people, when they harvest it, everybody has a different method, but this is the method we use today. We harvest it from the ground, we bring it to the workstation, we cut the roots off, hopefully something like this. Now, when you're working with people and you're working with volunteers, you're bound to have people just do something else. And that happens, and so you have to be okay with that. But I will cut the roots here, and that base plate on the garlic here is protected and is intact, and it's a happy bulb by that time. The paper here has there's no evidence of any insects or anything like that. We've been very lucky for the most part to have a good crop. This is how I used to store the garlic. I would leave the full stems on, and I would place them maybe 2 to 3 layers on top of these shelving units in the garlic shack. But the moisture was so high in there that black mold would always start on the inside of the stems, and I needed to figure out a way to stop that from happening, because when I was sharing that garlic, now I'm giving garlic to people or trading garlic with people that is not even going to last a full season. And so that's accountability for the thing I'm growing. So then we moved to the method of clipping garlic right away. And some people say that it takes away the length of the shelf life. But really, if you treat them like apples and you cure them and you keep them in dry, not too warm, it could be cold a little bit, there's a range of whatever your basement is, but as long as it's dry or you have a fan on it very at a distance, some air circulation in your basement or hanging on your kitchen, wherever. There's no like special building for it in our farm. So that would be a method I've done for about 4 years now, and it's prevented more or less a lot of diseases from happening. So we would take this, we would go stack all the trays, and we would put a little bit of heat and a little bit of fans, and it just keeps that air circulation nice. Your garlic will be cured in like 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes I put too much heat on it, and thinking that the mold was going to start, I got real scared. And what it did was it dehydrated the garlic. And so the garlic was a little bit lighter by the time it came to either selling or trading. And to me, I don't really care. Like, it's just, you still eat it, doesn't matter. But, people will notice when it's a soft garlic, or people notice a lot of things. So that's like the processing stage. Next. Okay, so I think there's I don't know how anybody feels about it, but I'm interested in knowing, when you're seed saving, is your mind around I'm gonna eat this, or I'm just gonna store it away and never eat this? And what is the portion you will plant for eating, and what is the portion you will keep for saving seed? For garlic, it's about half. I'll save half for seed, I'll trade or sell half. But I'm just curious with other seeds and other sources of food, because maybe, I don't know, maybe I could be planting less and trading more. But in terms of actual sharing and saving seed, I'm curious to know what everybody's experience is on that. So for the seed saving part, now my mind is, at first I was only concerned with food source. So I'm growing this crop to feed people. I don't care about the seed. It's it was a secondary thought. Now I'm thinking, okay, what kind of crop do I want to be growing? Is it something that I want to be matching from the grocery stores? Or do I want to kind of like move towards a more natural setting, a more natural crop to kind of respect its true values or its true way of growing? So a lot of times, and this is when I was like sick, it forced me to leave the garlic scapes on. So that was a lesson for me. And so I started seeing the beauty and saying, hey, like, why wouldn't I want to leave the garlic scape flower on, even though it gives me a smaller bulb in the end? But if you leave the garlic scape on, that's that curly thing that comes off, it's the flower stalk. If you leave these on, and some people will be bored with this, but if you take the bulbules off, okay, like these little things here, and I did bring bulbules today just so people can take home and plant. You pick the bulbules off until you just have the stalks and the flowers remaining. These are two different varieties. One is the Red Russian, the other one is Music. Music has bulbules that are like way more plentiful on the stalk. And the Red Russian, they have larger, rounder bulbules, which are maybe like, I don't know, 20 to 25 here. And you can even see them bulging out differently, as opposed to this one, which would just be like a nice round ball. So you pluck those garlic bulbules off, and there's a chance, I still haven't succeeded, but I did something wrong. I would always like cut the scape off and put it in water, and it would cause like the stem to rot. And it's like, it just was a repeat for me until I said, why don't I just like leave them on the plant? And it solved a lot of issues. Unfortunately, these ones I cut, so that doesn't matter right now. But you can essentially cross the garlic and create a new variety if you so wished. But I don't know, there's a very low chance of that happening. But its true seed stopped happening naturally because of, I don't know, over cultivation, trying to grab its real good properties and trying to throw away the not so good qualities. So I'm trying to like reverse that thinking. And they also say, and I've seen it with my own eyes, that if you leave the garlic stalk on and it hardens, and then after you take that garlic out of the ground, yes, it will be smaller, but it does store longer. And if we're thinking like really into the future, I think in the past we didn't eat as much and we valued food a lot differently, so we wouldn't be eating as much. So why would we want bigger things naturally? And also, roots that were more wild were stronger in its properties than a cultivated variety. So, you know, bigger is not always better, and to rewild our way of looking at food, and that the food that we have today is vastly different from how it used to be. When we're talking about pre-colonial ideas. So the true seed is far from happening on its own. So now what we have left to work with is bulbules, which is a clone of the garlic bulb or clove, except that it doesn't transfer any diseases or viruses. It takes up to 2 to 5 years, depending on the variety. So you just treat it like a small seed. The first year you have it, you put it in the ground. I read on different things, like you put it like 6 inches deep, which I don't really agree with. I would say I always plant a seed 2.5 times its size in the depth of the soil. And really, you don't even have to put that much soil on top. It doesn't have to be packed. And you can basically go do that next week because of the moon. So you go and you uncover, if you have a raised garden or even a pot, put a little bit of soil in there and leave it outside. Make sure it doesn't get dry, but don't overwater it also. It doesn't need a lot of water. Then there's the garlic clove, which is just popping the bulb apart, and now you have the cloves. It's the fastest, easiest way to ensure you're a good crop in the short term. But over time, continuously planting the clove will weaken its productivity, and you will get accumulated problems. So that's why a field rotation is actually really good. And so that's I think about it for garlic. I have no other notes here. But I guess to close off, the idea with garlic, and the garlic being a teacher of how I've practiced my relationship with food, is that, when I was younger, I always had access to the forest. And, my father would take me onion picking in the forest, and he would take me medicine picking in the forest. And when I started, studying in school and farming, I was like, but what about seeds? Yes, I can buy my seed, but how do I get the seed? And that's when I started asking questions. Wow, we are really screwed, because the control of seeds and all the food we eat is really in the hands of, I don't want to say, it's not the government, it's bigger than the government. But essentially, when colonizers came here, that system was well put into place. So imagining that they're coming here knowing what is going to happen to this land, bringing cultivars that were in the trade routes in other continents, there was going to be that force of other plants coming into our lives and taking over the forests and stuff like that. And I try not to look at it in a scary way, but more of it has potential to also be our teachers on what is going on. So if you look out the window and you have Phragmites all over the fields, that's an invasive species that surrounds us. And what do you do about it? So the only the large way of dealing with those things is using pesticides. So now we're going to start putting pesticides to treat things. And that's not really a solution. It's, in fact, it makes it worse because all the insects are going to die off, and there won't be that balance. Additionally, there's burning, so scorching the earth. That's a practice that my father always did, and his father did, and so I know burning the ground is really scary, but I do believe that there is potential to start bringing that practice back. Even some of my teachers from school was I wish we can just burn all the Phragmites and get it over with. But I mean, there's problems with that. For sure. But if we look at Phragmites as a food source rather than an enemy, and realize there is that abundance of food around us, and how do we cooperate with the plants around us? And it's the same thing with the wild parsnip, right? Because I have so much wild parsnip around the farm, but it took over really quickly. And once you start tampering with the natural environment that has established itself for maybe 50 years, you're going to get those invasive species problem. It's just part of the equation, and it takes a lot of work to counteract that. But if we can, I will start eating them now. I wasn't sure. I needed some person to confirm that with me, but it does taste it does smell like carrot. It does. It's just you got to be careful with the stalk. And even then, something about a 2-year, it's only, if the juice only gets on your hand, on it after its 2nd year or something like that, I read, but I'm really not sure.
When they're edible, when they're best, there isn't anything toxic about it.
Okay.
You can just go in and dig them up but yeah, you don't eat unlike carrot,
Yeah.
carrot is safe to eat the tops.
Yeah.
But I've never heard of anyone eating the parsnip greens.
Okay.
Probably because of some kind of toxin in it. But
Yeah.
when you dig them in the early spring, the ground is so cold, right? And so they just explode with like freshness and
Amazing.
yeah, you can't help but want to eat it. Once you dig it up, you can just smell it, right? It just invites you to
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
You can burn yourself though with the wild parsnip.
Yeah.
I've burnt myself bad.
Yeah, I know a lot of people.
It's so bad.
Yeah, it is really bad. That's why I do want to, we're using the animals to help that issue along, but the animals can't go everywhere. So being able to use wild parsnip as a food source, hey, why not? That's the most natural thing.
And usually it's the sun. The sun plays some role to
Yes.
That's how you burn your. If you get it on your skin and then you expose that to the sun, you burn yourself. Like I had big welts filled with liquid, so it's just you can clean it off and you're fine. It's
Yeah.
photosensitive.
Yeah, photosensitive. Yeah, I did have like a wicked idea where it was like, well, it's a barrier, so whoever's not supposed to be there is gonna get it. But no, and that's not a good way. But so everybody who does come onto the farm, they know that it's there, and we make sure that they know. So that's it. Yeah. Well.
Okay, I never do garlic before, so I would like to this year. Okay, why is it planted in the fall?
For northern climates and for hardneck garlic, it needs to, I forget the term for that, but it needs to go through a cold phase. Stratify? Okay.
Okay, on that question, okay, like, let's use tulips, for instance, because tulips could be planted in the fall until spring comes up. You can put it in the freezer, and that's why we get flowers in July, August. Can you do the same thing with garlic? Put it in the freezer and then plant it in the spring, like right now if I grab garlic,
Yep.
whatever, freezer. It's the same concept.
I think
You're
so.
not going to get a good crop because you plant them in the fall. They don't come up, but the roots go down. So it gets a good head start before the growing season. I mean, you're going to get garlic, but they're not going to be anywhere near the potential it would be
Yeah.
because it doesn't have that root system.
And and also they say that it needs to have a certain period with cold, not just a day. They say like 5 to 8 weeks. And then it will, I mean, there are other reasons why a garlic clove won't split into other cloves. It won't make a ball, but I believe that if it doesn't have that length of time long enough to stratify, that you'll be getting like a garlic that maybe just looks like an onion or with 2 bulbs or maybe 3 or something. It won't grow to its full size. Yeah. But on another note,
I asked a question earlier about when I grow garlic, what do I look at it as? I look at it as food. However, when I harvest it and I bundle them as I harvest them. So 10 to 20 bulbs in a bundle. I don't clean the dirt off, I don't remove the leaves, I hang them 3 to 4 weeks till they're dry. Then I remove the roots and then I remove the stem. I leave like 4 or 5 inches on the bottom. And that's how I've had the best success. And I'm not going back because I made a mistake one year and I tried washing them so they looked like restaurant style. It was the worst thing I could have done.
yeah.
And I found out just leave the dirt on. Just leave the dirt on, brush it off when you trim the roots down. And at that stage, I look at it and I say, oh, you're next year's crop. You're next, and I separate it that way. And I grow approximately 200 garlics per year.
Yeah.
So I need to put away at least 50 to 60 bulbs for the following year.
Okay.
I wanted to try the growing them from seed,
Yeah.
but when I researched it, I don't have 5 years to grow garlic.
I know what. So there, that's what I did bring today. It puts into perspective a slow food process. It takes you even, oh, okay, I got to let go of
The only reason I got into the garlic is I was reading so much about the garlic from China, and I haven't heard a single good thing about it.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what, I got to change this. And we happened to go to Cody Coke one year for the Lumina Festival. And the following day we looked around, we went to different shops, and I got garlic from there. And their farmers have a common mission. And their common mission is to make Quebec self-sufficient in its garlic. So you buy their garlic and they encourage you to plant it. They even tell you how to plant it.
Yeah.
So that's how I got started.
Good. Yeah. And before we move on, but he had proposed 2 years ago at the other seed conference, he had mentioned growing cucumbers with garlic. And he said he had a very big crop, so big nobody wanted the cucumbers because there were so many. So I will be trying. I do like getting fresh ideas from people who have tried things, and I really encourage that sharing. So I will be trying that.
It was an unscientific model because I had 2 garlic beds. One I added the garlic to it, and one I didn't. And I wanted to see the results. So my standard feed or garden, the bulbs were the standard size. But the crop that I planted the cucumbers with, more than 50% of them were like that size.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe that. So as far as I'm settled, it works. We planted, we harvested and canned more cucumbers than I wanted to. We gave away as much as we could. We still couldn't do it. So we landed up composting them.
Yeah.
And that was 4 plants. We got like 36 liters of cucumbers, pickles. Her friend got like 2 dozen, and we were just giving them away as fast as they were growing. So they're not only companions, but they benefit each other. And I'm sold on it. I read about it, and I said, I'm going to try it, and I'll do it in my way of controlled test, and it worked. But I told Valerie that she's going to do the garlic with the cucumbers. Make sure she's got somebody to pick off the extra cucumbers, because she'll have way more than she needs.
Yeah, I'll eat your cucumbers. Companion planting, like the bugles, I've always had a lot because I either don't get around to it or sometimes I just leave it. They go really well, like just putting them with your roses, and there's like there are plants that exist that go well with garlic. The garlic supports, and so just going out looking at the rose family is one of those families that you just pitch them with it, and then you don't worry that if it takes 5 years, because they're just doing their work, they're being undisturbed, and you can almost ignore them.
Exactly. Exactly. You can ignore them. That's what I do. I don't know who was first. If you put your hand up. You can go.
I tried to do the thing of wilding and growing from seed because the guy who sold me my first garlic told me that the seed was a way to adapt more resilience than just always doing clones. And I found that my garlic got smaller and smaller, and it was a bit like harvesting wild strawberries compared to those big ones that look GMO. And like when you consider that you don't do any work, so what if it's a little bit smaller? Like you just have harvest. But in the end, I found that doing it with the seed, the garlic stayed in the same place longer, and it collided with the idea of crop rotation. I ended up getting 10, I don't know what to say that in English, that were yellows, and it's a disease that affects leaves and onions.
It's a rust.
It's what?
It's a rust.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many different problems.
So I don't know how to get around that with trying to do seeds, because I really am interested in that building resilience piece.
Well, it's usually, that's the thing with garlic. It is like any crop can be finicky, but that's why I do like with the bulbs, yes, sometimes they get forgotten in the ground, but I will harvest them and then throw them in another area.
Okay, so you harvest.
Maybe after 2 years, because the bogeys do grow back. The
Yeah.
bogeys
They do,
grow
then you
back.
have like the same thing as planting a clover.
A little bit bigger. For me, it hasn't happened in 2 years. It happened in like, let's say 20.
I'll try to
Yeah. Yeah. Don't get discouraged. It's just, it's a lifetime. Yeah.
Oh, what I did help with like garlic is every few years, I buy one little package of garlic from Codeco. I mix it in
Yeah.
to try to keep the strain stronger.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask about diversity. When we're looking at seed saving in our own, like at my house, I got tons of flowers and stuff growing here and there. So when we're looking at seed saving and we're just continuously planting in our own yards and trying to save the seed, and Janice touched on it, the seed exchanges. I think that's a way of keeping our the diversity as you go and well, let's change seeds, and then you plant them, and then it builds in builds up the seed you have at home, and then you touched on it with your bubble saving them, because then I was like, if you plant the same thing over and over without introducing, you're putting yourself at risk of a collapse.
Yeah, exactly. And so with that example, diversification of species since the beginning of time, that's what gave us what we have today. And it was like, it's a balance between life and death, and some species die off, and a lot have, and some have continued. And I think that we have, as human beings, we have the burden of responsibility to each other, because we exist in communities. So with the seed saving that you speak about, a lot of the youth who come through the farm, they are really so interested in saving seed, and they want to have a network of seed savers, bigger than, I think, wherever they're existing with their friends or family. They feel the need to have a bigger network within our communities, specifically our communities, not like other organizations, so that they can feel safe to talk about their realizations about growing food, and they want to grow things. And that's really amazing. Both men and women want to participate in growing food together, and every day is an opportunity for that to happen. And so I'm very grateful to be here today, so I could talk to everyone again and to touch base on that, because I don't think I had that before 2 years ago. So yeah. So yeah, well.